All right, y'all aren't finna like what I have to say, but this needs to be explained because I'm just tired of people voicing ignorant opinions about this topic. So I'm gonna explain to y'all the difference between gender and sex. So, I actually study psychology and sociology, have my degree and a minor, so I think I can actually talk about this in a logical, scientific manner. So, first and foremost, gender is a social construct that refers to a set of norms, expectations, behaviors of each biological sex. Gender cannot be seen or touched, but it can change. And gender roles are associated with a biological sex. So that is gender. That's my personal definition, but all right. So this is my definition of gender based off of what I studied, but this is what matches the actual definition. Anyways, gender is used to help us make sense of our biological identity, but it is constructed by our society. So in that sense, gender has very real consequences that we have to use the concept of gender to address. So when I tell you that something is a social construct, it means it only exists because of the society that created it. But it has very real consequences because of the way we use gender construction. And I'm going to try to explain this better. I hope you guys understand that, but race is similar, but that's another story. Okay, so this is still just explaining how gender works in our society. So gender roles have been used to dictate certain aspects of our society. So when we say use gender to talk about being a wife or being a husband, that is gender roles that we constructed as a society, but those roles are still very much attached to your biological sex. So, talking about sex. Sex is biological, it does not change, and it is determined by our DNA. So sex is something that is just a fact. It's not something that you can change. It's literally determined by your DNA. So it's biological male, biological female. Okay, so sex continued. It is biological, and there are biological or sex disorders attached to your sex chromosomes that do exist in society, but those don't necessarily create another completely different biological sex. It's just like a sex disorder, but the main two, the norms, are either male XY or female XX. That's the biological sex that cannot be refuted by an opinion. All right, so the reason gender is not able to be discussed without discussing your biological sex is because gender is literally attached to a biological sex. Gender only exists because there are biological sexes. So, for instance, if I'm talking about a girl, I'm talking about a young biological female. If I'm talking about a boy, I'm referring to a younger biological male. If I'm talking about a woman, I'm referring to an adult biological female. And if I'm talking about a man, I'm referring to an adult biological male. So the definition of woman, man, boy, girl, all are tied to a biological sex. All right, so this is not said to be mean. It's just said to make sense of our entire discussion on gender and sex. For they, them to be a gender, it has to be attached to a biological sex because the very definition of any type of gender requires an attachment to a biological sex. So they, them would need to be attached to a biological sex that is neither biological male or biological female. And as I told y'all previously, there are gender disorders where someone can have an XXY, XXS, but those are very rare and they don't apply to most of the people who refer to themselves as they, them. All right, so just based off of everything I said, it is literally impossible for they, them to be a gender. And again, I'm saying this because there needs to be some sort of truth brought to this discussion because there's just a lot of chaos, confusion, and delusion literally just around all of this. This is why they, them cannot be used to accurately identify gender. If they are lost and I just say, they is lost, we need to find them. There needs to be some sort of identifier that I can think of, they or them, in order to accurately describe who they or them is. And I've already said they or them is not attached to any sort of biological sex. So the only way for me to accurately bring about finding they who is missing is to describe their biological sex or gender, right? So it's kind of just impossible to make sense of they or them in a world that uses these things to make sense of our world. It just creates a lot of confusion and chaos, which is why people need to just learn to accept the truth, and that's your biological sex. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just what you are, and learn to love it, learn to accept it. Okay, y'all. That's it. Bye. All right. So now that I've given you definitions, let me just explain to you guys why it doesn't make sense to get rid of gender. It's literally just because you cannot separate the sex from the gender because it's literally in the definition. But gender roles, however, can be changed simply by doing them. So if we say it's not a gender norm or role for women to work in construction, all a woman has to do is work in construction to break a gender norm, because these gender norms and gender roles are all completely created by society. But that does not ever take away the fact that a biological sex is associated with your gender.